Hello and welcome back to the latest edition of the Morning Bulletin here on the Blood Red channel. I'm your host, Edward Kay. Joining me is Liverpool.com editor Matt Addison. And today we're going to start with a little transfer rumour. French midfielder, plays for Juventus, Adrien Rabiot. I'm sure we've all heard of him. We've all seen him in the French side in the World Cup. Dropped a bit of a hint that he could be on the way to the Reds in the summer, saying that he has followed the club for quite a while because he was a massive fan of Steven Gerrard when he was younger. I can certainly relate to that one, Matt. What are your thoughts on Rabiot as a player?
I thought he was quite good during the World Cup, to be fair. I've never been a massive fan of him. I don't think he's... How shall I put it? I don't think he's a typical Jurgen Klopp midfielder, if you want to put it that way. I don't think he necessarily puts in the kind of work and sort of running that you'd typically expect Liverpool to target. I do think he's a decent player. He's one of those where his contract's coming to the end. I'm sure there'll be a fair bit of interest. He's been linked with Liverpool before. Nothing's ever really come of it. I don't think there's ever really been any serious interest. I'd be surprised if there was serious interest this time around. But yeah, there's a lot to do in the midfield, isn't there? There's a lot of things to be thought about. And I think there's going to be a lot of these kind of players, really, when you think of, if Liverpool can get Jude Bellingham, how much he's going to cost. They are going to have to find sort of cheaper alternatives elsewhere. I think there's definitely a number of players who would be well ahead of Rabiot in the pecking order if there is any interest at all. But yeah, it's interesting that he's come out again. I know he's spoken in the past about having been a Liverpool fan and Steven Gerrard and all of that sort of thing. But like you say, I mean, I am also a big fan of Steven Gerrard, but don't expect me to be lining up alongside Fabinho and Jordan Henderson next season.
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed my thoughts on him as well there. Like, he looks all right for France sometimes when he plays, but I think one of the main criticisms that you see levelled at him is that he's lazy, and that's one thing Jurgen Klopp's not really going to put up for in his midfield. But with Liverpool searching for 3-4 midfielders in the summer, who knows? We are bound to get the links like this. But I want to get your thoughts on the Serie A as a market in general. Obviously, been linked to the likes of Lobotka, Savic, Rabiot, Barella, names like this. A lot of midfielders from the Serie A of late. What do you think about the league in general? Because I think it can be a bit of a tricky one to sort of estimate where a player's at. It's a bit like coming from League One, I think, at times.
Yeah, it's a hard one to assess, I think. I suppose the only thing you would say is that Napoli are arguably the best team in Europe at the moment. The league is fairly strong. I know Juventus are quite a long way down the league, but that's partly or largely because of the points deduction that they've got. There's some really good teams in there. I think you'd be most confident of a kind of switch across from Italy to Liverpool if it was Napoli, because of the way that they play and the intensity. It's not a traditional Italian defensive team. It's very much, an attacking, creative, high energy, high intensity type sort of team. So I think that would be, the sort of easiest sort of thing to look across and see that translating well to the Premier League. I think there's a decent chance that someone like Victor Osimhen is in England next season. Kvaratskhelia as well, I think, will probably have a big move after, the season that he's had. So there's loads of good players in there. Whether Lobotka is one that Liverpool would go for, I think he's already 28. I think that probably maybe rules him out. Milinkovic-Savic is one that is interesting, is clearly a very, very good player. But I always think when there's a player who's linked with Liverpool and Manchester United every single summer, there's got to be a reason why he's never left and always been there for the past 6-7 years. He's been linked with Liverpool and it's never really happened. So I do think there's a number of good players. Nicola Barella is the only one that I've not mentioned there, which I think is one that Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool are big fans of, and it wouldn't surprise me if Jude Bellingham didn't happen for them maybe to go and try and do something like that. I think Jurgen Klopp was asked about him last summer, and he kind of said, well, he wasn't really available. It wasn't one that was possible to go and do, and he is a big fan of him. But yeah, it's a hard one, I think, to make the case for Rabiot over some of those others. And the fact that he's a free transfer possibly could play into it in terms of how much Bellingham might cost and the other things that they need to do, and if they need to go and get more than 2 in midfield. But ultimately, I don't think the cost should be prohibitive for Liverpool in the summer when it comes to the midfield. I think they've just got to accept that it's going to cost them a lot of money. They might have to go and spend more than 200 million. If they do that, then they will fix that problem, and it's a problem of their own making, isn't it? It's ultimately they're only going to have to spend that sort of sum this summer because they haven't done in previous summers. They tried to get Tchouaméni, who would have cost a club record fee. Obviously, ends up at Real Madrid for more than 80 million last summer. They were prepared to go and do that. So there is money there, and there is scope to go out and spend a big amount. But if it would surprise me, to say the least, if Liverpool decided to go for a free transfer just to save a little bit of money. I think they surely have to accept that they're just going to have to bite the bullet and go for it and try and spend big and sort the problem long term, because as I say, they've kind of backed themselves into a bit of a corner in that regard. Yeah,
as you say, I think it'd be a bit surprising to see them sort of cheap out and go for the free transfer, especially when it's a player like Rabiot not necessarily fitting in Klopp's plans that well, given the emphasis in recruitment on getting the right players in and identifying the right targets. But we'll move on to the Alisson news. Left out of the Brazil squad for this latest international break. Ederson coming out and admitting that he was a bit surprised by it. Do you think Jurgen Klopp will be happy that Alisson's been left out, sort of as Liverpool enter the most crucial period of the season?
Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? I think it's no bad thing for Liverpool that he doesn't have to travel, doesn't have to play. There's no risk of, I suppose he's still going to train, so there is some risk, but less risk of an injury and things like that. So yeah, it's no bad thing. It is a bit of a weird one. I can only assume that Brazil are taking a look at a couple of younger options. Maybe, Ederson doesn't always get to play. Maybe he'll play a part in a couple of games. And when you've got arguably the two best goalkeepers in the world, you probably only need to take one of them in certain instances. And yeah, it's a bit of a shame for Alisson. I'm sure he would have rather have been a part of that, but maybe it is just a sort of bigger picture thing. They're taking a look at a couple of other players, and I'm sure he'll be back in the squad next time. But yeah, it'd be interesting to kind of find out what the reasoning is behind that. I don't know whether the manager has been asked about it, or I'm sure at some point Alisson may say something or try and explain it. But yeah, I'm sure there's no reticence from Liverpool. I'm sure that would be would only be a good thing. Like you say, it can't be a bad thing for Liverpool heading into a big period, that he gets a little bit of a rest. And I think he's arguably been Liverpool's best player this season. So yeah, it's a strange one to see him left out. You don't often see it, but I'm sure there are reasons and reasoning behind that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Like you say, for my money, he is the best keeper in the world by far at the moment. Do you think it is sort of wanting to give him a bit of a rest and maybe give Ederson a bit of a chance, because obviously Alisson does seem to be the preferred number one for Brazil and gets a lot more chances?
Yeah, that probably is what it is. I mean, we're only able to speculate until someone comes out and confirms something. But yeah, that kind of seems like the case to me. It's one of those where maybe they just decided between themselves that Ederson was going to get the opportunity to impress this time, and they've kind of thought, well, if Ederson's there, you don't need to have both of them. You don't need to sit one on the bench and make him travel all that way not to be involved. So yeah, it's like I say, it's a bit of a strange one, but I'm sure they've got the reasons for that, and yeah, it's no bad thing. I've certainly got no complaints.
Any worries at all that it could affect Alisson mentally and impact his form in any way, or is it just good for him to get a rest, do you think?
Yeah, I think that the rest is beneficial. I'm sure behind the scenes he'll know exactly what the reasoning is and all the rest of it. Excuse me. I'm sure it'll be absolutely fine for him. And like I say, he's been one of Liverpool's best players this season. So yeah, if he gets a rest, he comes back and he plays his part in the last few games for Liverpool. I'm sure he'll be back in the Brazil squad in the summer, and yeah, there won't be any issues, I'm sure.
Yeah, Liverpool are going to need him to be continuing his fine form in the league, and for that matter in the Champions League. He was unbelievable at Bernabeu the other night, how it only finished 1-0. But yeah, once again, just a friendly reminder that Alisson is definitely the best keeper in the world, even if he's not in the Brazil squad and has been left out for Ederson. Even Ederson admitting his surprise at that one. But there we go. That is going to be all we've got time for here on the Morning Bulletin today. So, Matt, thanks for joining me, and we'll catch you tomorrow morning.